everyone on a part of design, which is the niche in a niche. It's a kind of incredible set that we have right now on the stage, because it's normally opposite percentage of women versus men. But I'm glad to gather all of the women actually that work with the large-scale 3D printing and the 3D printing technology. I'm Aga Blonska. I'm the production and design lead of 3D Maker Zone, which you're right now in since December last year. I started my career with the large-scale 3D printing 10 years ago at Actual, back then Dus Architects. After that, I was the lead architect at the StudioRap, and after StudioRap, I opened my own design studio focusing on large-scale 3D printing, executing design for the ideas like CoWave, which is the software that allows you to design without using the hands, only with your positive emotions. So I use the EEG scanner to detect the positive emotions, and this data is sent to AI, translated, and out of which you get the image that is really the response of your emotions. One of the first panels was printed here at the 3D Maker Zone. Another project that I did here is the new dome, which is known for the lamp from bacteria, was showcased 2 years ago on the Milan Design Week. But right now, I would like to welcome those incredible guests that I have today. And over the next 45 minutes, we are going to talk about a shift that is quietly changing how things get designed and made digital fabrication, and the way it's pulling nature and technology into the same conversation. I'm joined by 4 designers who each live in the space from different angle. So let me introduce them. Lilian van Daal is a Dutch product designer working at the meeting point of nature and technology. She uses biomimicry to recreate nature structures, refine over 1 million years into sustainable, efficient production methods, and design for well-being through biophilic principles that reconnect people with the natural world. Working alongside scientists, biologists, and architects, her award-winning work has been exhibited worldwide and acquired by institutions including the Centre Pompidou in Paris and NEL. She was previously worked with studios such as Philips Design and Studio Drift, which I know from her that she was the first intern, which makes this incredible. Mikkel Huse is a Danish industrial designer specializing in bio-inspired and parametric design. He has run his own practice, Mikkel Huse Studio, in North Denmark for around a decade, and has worked in 3D printing since then, starting with the internship at the renowned Joris Laarman Lab in Netherlands. The studio celebrated for pushing digital fabrication to its limits. He also spent several years at the Aalborg University as a researcher assistant and external lecturer, where he earned his master's in industrial and product design. Carmen Enríquez is a Spanish computational designer at Nagami, the Spanish studio known worldwide for large-scale format robotic 3D printing in recycled and recyclable materials. She comes to digital fabrication through computational and parametric design, and her Theodelf Master project, Controlling Roughness, developed with the biomaterials at Omlab. It's also the Dutch company, and it was her research was shown at the Dutch Design Week last year, 2025. Used 3D printing parameters to control the surface roughness of a biocircular material, and so tune its acoustic absorption, a precise hands-on example of designing function through fabrication. So Sánchez is an Argentinian architect based in Rotterdam from IO Studio that you saw the presentation in the morning, working at the intersection of parametric design and digital fabrication. With a background in digitally oriented architecture, she brings technical experience The creative process and her interest in biodesign drives a fusion of technology and nature. Through IO Studio, she is reimagining traditional architecture as a synthesis of computational design and ecological awareness, where each structure tests how the digital and the organic can coexist. So it's quite an incredible panel. Well, let's start light with one quick question and a quick answer. First question, what first pulled you toward digital fabrication? What was it, technology or the idea?
Well, hello, everyone. Well, I believe it's the technology, but it's fully related in the concept of what we want to create. So how this technology these ideas can only be printed and tested out with this technology.
Hello as well. I think for me, it felt like it really directly bridged the gap between concept and production. I feel like as a design student, you deliver a render and that's it. That's your design. But here you really were able to fabricate what you were imagining. So that was really exciting to me.
For me, it was biomimicry, which was pulling me towards additive manufacturing, actually, because with additive manufacturing, you are able to recreate nature in a very efficient way, yeah, and super precise, and you have a lot of design freedoms, which was perfect for me.
Is this okay? Yeah, I know. For me, it was more the love for complexity. Like for me, I started as an industrial designer, so we used 3D printing for prototypes and things like that. But later on, as a more moving into this more, call it almost avant-garde word of doing this kind of design, the complexity that you are able to produce, and also the fact that. Normal industrial design, you have all of these initial costs of making something live in this world, where additive manufacturing allows you to do more site-specific products and things like that. So you're allowed to experiment more than you were with traditional manufacturing, both in aesthetical and functional ways, I think.
Okay. And what's one thing you can make today that it was impossible to make 5 years ago? Well, you can say also 10 years ago. I mean, 5 years ago is not so far away from now, but let's say when you started and it's possible right now.
For me, I think one of the things that just over the last 5 years is just the whole idea of having desktop 3D printers suddenly becoming something that everyone has.
Yeah.
So we at the studio we also designed furniture for desktop 3D printing. And that would have been like a huge project for a person 5-10 years ago. But because printers are bigger and faster and things like that, of course, it's a different thing than here. But the whole industry is moving over to being much more compliant. And as a designer, I think there's some opportunities to look into these areas and say, okay, we can design things that 5 years ago would be too difficult to make.
Okay, let's begin where it all starts, with the nature. And when I spoke with individually with all of you, it's the base of your inspirations. When you say nature inspires you, what are you actually borrowing? Its forms, or its process, or its underlying logic? Where's the real lesson lays? Yeah.
If I look at this question from this biomimicry perspective, it's not only about replicating a shape or a geometry, but it's more designing the way nature does, like using its life's principles to design. So using nature in a very efficient way, which is also possible with additive manufacturing, of course, and the complex shapes, but we have to design within a system. So we have to see where our resources come from, but also designing for circularity, where does it go afterwards? Like we have to design in a whole living system, you know, like not in a very linear way. So, yeah.
For me, would be understanding the underlying performances in nature, what the computational design and the 3D printing approach allows is to understand and replicate those performances and into build objects that have the different variations and how those variations respond to those performances and how they can be integrated.
I guess also to add up to everything you said, I think for me it's also interesting to look into systems that also give back to nature. So in a way, what would happen with this object we just designed if we left it just to degrade? How can nature also nurture from that? And I think it's exciting to also think, I don't know, 50 years later, what will this product look like after being in the wild? So I think I'm also interested in materials in that sense, with chemistry that nature does not harm from as well.
I think that the thing that I realized at some point was that I think there's such a huge difference between natural complexity and human-made complexity. So if you look at a city, for example, with wires hanging over, and you walk in a forest, you get two completely different experiences from those complexities. And the idea that we can take now, because additive manufacturing is becoming more prominent, we can do complex shapes and systems. And the guide for me to make those complex systems kind of resonate with humans is to make some kind of idyllic experience. And I think nature has just done this for so long that the way that it handles complexity compared to how we handle complexity is just very different. So working with parametric design, for example, we are suddenly allowed to make complex systems, but how should they behave? Mm-hmm. And that's where I think we can learn a lot from how nature has already made these complex systems work, both in function and also, of course, aesthetics.
Yeah, you also mentioned staying with that image of you mentioned that the new designer will be the system conductor when we spoke. And I really like this termination of who we are in this new area of designing, because we touched this subject a little bit in terms of the ownership of the process become much wider. So you make much bigger amount of decisions in the process to get to the realization, right? So could you refer a little bit to this the system conductor over how you see that in the design process?
I think that the traditional design, you would sit down, for example, in furniture design, you would draw every exact line, and that's how you want the thing to be, and then you would move into CAD, for example, and into production. But suddenly we are working with such complex systems, you wouldn't be able to draw everything, not completely. So the thing now I see in my own practice is the sketching has become much more abstract. It's more about catching some kind of feeling that this is exactly what I want the thing to look like. Not down to the detail, but what I want it to feel like. And then I move into all the parametric work and all of this thing, and I try to make my systems kind of operate in a way that it matches the thing that I envisioned first. And that it's more like a conductor thing, because I'm not drawing every single line, but I'm putting systems into place that add up to something that I find interesting at the end. And I think that the designers, the thing that we as designers have to do is we have to know the intent of what we are trying to do before we start to do it. Because the parametric tools can really quickly overtake. Yeah. You can do all things, but you need to have some kind of intent between the first idea and what the outcome will become, because complexity is difficult to handle. Yeah.
And I want to touch on one subject that over the talk with Lilian, you said technology can bring us closer to nature. So Mikkel was explaining a little bit about the complexity and this technology, but that's almost the opposite of how we usually talk about technology and heavy machinery used to actually execute something that is nature-wise.
Yeah, I think technology can bring us closer to nature if we use it in the right way. We can still use technology for very bad stuff and to produce more products and more waste. And so, but if we do it with the right intent to imitate nature in an efficient way, to use material only where material is needed, to use the geometries we see in nature as a functionality. So we can also use one single material with different functionalities. If we apply a different structure, we can do a lot. And I think in that way, we can come closer to nature. If we see these products, we are more connected to nature. And I think this can help us, but also help nature in general, right? So, yeah.
Well, you touched the subject of materials, and I'm curious on this one because amongst the conversations you all mentioned the importance of sustainability in the process, and one of the reasons that you actually choose this technology. So, so this digital fabrication promises more sustainable outcomes. Where does that promise actually holds up, and where is still more hope than reality?
Yes, I think digital fabrication is a tool to be more sustainable, that it doesn't necessarily mean that all 3D printing objects, structure, architecture are sustainable. I think there are ways of doing and ways of approaching each design, each project that goes for a more sustainable approach in terms of the use of material, the structure, the material itself. So it really depends on the approach of the designer.
I also think in terms of sustainability, we also need to keep asking the question of why should something be 3D printed? I think there's a lot of amazing products out there that are 3D printed, but at one point, we also 3D print things because they're really cool. So I feel like we should keep asking the question, why are we using this technology, not a different one, to achieve a more sustainable practice?
Yeah, but on this question, you also, Carmen, research a lot about like 3D printing from the side of materiality, right? So you started from industrial design already on your studies. I mentioned about the roughness of the material and the acoustic performance that you research on with the OMLab. How does it work from your perspective? Like obviously it is important, but for me personally, sometimes it feels as the core of the project that I do work with material and design towards the material. How does it look for you?
I mean, I think I start, of course, with the technology in mind, because this is the technology I love and I want to keep learning and exploring. But especially with the project you mentioned, with biomaterials, I think I really wanted to take the material at the forefront, but together with the technology, and really ask the question to why should I be 3D printing this material, and really try to see what the unique property this material has is. In this case, it was the roughness that really brought the aspect of acoustics, because I was really trying to see, I want to prove that there's a meaning to 3D printing this material, and I want to show that it allows this material to, a unique property of this material to shine that it would otherwise not if we would use a different approach, basically. So yeah, I think it's about playing around back and forth with the machine and the material and see what comes out.
Well, beyond sustainability, let's go right now to beauty, function, and feeling, because that's another subject that we talk a lot about. Like Mikkel, you touched this subject a little bit in terms of how you investigate in the process that gets to the form. But well, you have also said that complexity we take from nature can calm us. It's a little bit touching on the subject that you had a TED Talk. I wonder, could you explain a little bit and wrap this subject in the same, like the nature and the mathematical complexity, what overwhelm us?
I think it's just such a straightforward thing that we all have this experience walking in, for example, the forest, that we find that experience kind of calming. I think that's a very human kind of experience. But if you look at what you're actually walking, and you're walking in trees with all different branches, leaves are all different, the moss, you have mycelium in the ground, you have this intense complexity around you. And I think that for me, it's just a paradox that we find that complexity so calming. Like there has to be some kind of underlying logic in that kind of complexity that you don't find normally in human-made complexity. And for me, I think that the exploration of trying to make products and systems and things like that that kind of reflect that very core human experience of finding something efficient. When we do industrial design, the whole thing is trying to do something that lies in between different functions. So it has to do this and this and this, and you try to find a compromise somewhere. And that is exactly what nature is like really good at doing. It's really good at saying we need sunlight on the leaves, but we also need a high structure, and we also need this. And in between, there's some kind of efficient solution to that problem. And what my work is always trying to find some kind of efficient solution to a problem. And I think what I get, because I oftentimes look at nature as inspiration, I get structures and things that nature has already discovered, but I'm trying to figure out how did they do this, and like what corals grow in a way. Why do they do that, for example? So for me, that finding the efficient solution to a complex problem is very satisfying, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, adding something on this is like, it's even scientifically proven that if we look at nature, like that our nervous systems calms down, that we get more creative, and everybody is experiencing this in nature. But if we even look at how nature is built, like in fractals, for example, if we see a fractal in a very geometric way, then we perceive it in our brains as a fractal. So we immediately calm down. And so if we see a fractal in a very, not in the way nature builds it in 3D, but like only an image of it, then we experience already like the beneficial, how do you say it?
The result, that is the chemistry that happens in the brain, basically.
Well, it's intuitively.
You actually touch on a very interesting subject. Is like because we might think that those objects that are inspired with the nature, but especially in your projects as well, it's certain a mission that you're trying to, and the goal in the objects. So this is not just another item or the furniture, but brings more, brings to humans like some level of connection, right? Like you're also trying to bring that in your projects.
Yeah, and I really believe that if we bring this more in our natural environments or our living environments, like workplaces or houses or healthcare, for example, I really believe that we come closer to nature, so we connect more to nature. But in that, because of that, we also are more willing to work for nature, like, so it works the other way around. So if we connect more to nature, then I think in the end, we also believe that biomimicry, for example, is the only way we should design, that it's a very logic response to that for me, I think.
How does it work for you, Sol? Is it like, because in your case, you also very close to very natural materials, right? So it's engineering in a parametric design and also having the physical object that is very natural.
Yeah, so basically working with ceramics, it's a very ancient material and it has a lot of really old properties. We try to handle it in the most sustainable way when designing. The whole structural performance, the whole amount of material, and we have also that in mind when we are designing, right? So the whole engineering process, and I think that's what the digital fabrication also like bridge this gap between the design and the whole sustainable approach, and how we can design towards that direction.
And Carmen, I have a question to you. You've said, I like a beauty of functionality, and this is something that drives you over the studies in industrial design. When something is engineered for performance, structurally optimized and material efficient, does the beauty comes for free, or do you still have to fight for it?
Yeah, okay. I said, of course, that I see beauty in functionality because I have a very technical background. So for me, functionality is a really big part. Okay, quick answer. I don't think beauty comes for free. Like just directly, like you make something that's functional and it's beautiful. But I do think that it's something fulfills a certain need and in a very optimal way that already has a certain visual language. And I feel like it's the designer's task to make that visible. So for instance, when talking about acoustics, every imperfection in a layer really changes the performance of a whole huge facade system. And that really makes every layer matter. So I feel like this way of tweaking it to achieve a certain function also shows a different visual language. And I think maybe this beauty lays in the combination of functionality and form in a way. Yeah.
But in some way, we all have to fight for certain proportions, right? Because I think we all had the same problem with beauty in the sense of you have to keep it as an object, but that's not exactly what you want to have on a parametric result. So it's a little bit balancing, right? Like, how does it work for you? Like Mikkel, for example, like beauty and fighting for this beauty in the object, but still having this synthesized nature-inspired objects. It's like with the whole rules for 3D printing, it feels so simple, but it's not.
No. I think there's, of course, with 3D printing, there's, of course, a huge number of limitations. But I still think those limitations are much more freeing for a designer than standard fabrication. So achieving what, let's say, natural beauty in that is just a million times easier than it would have been doing injection molding larger parts or things like that, because the complexity that you can make, the larger items you can make with 3D printing it allows a larger impact than traditional manufacturing would do. Because if you had to do something like large-scale acoustics in traditional manufacturing, you would do a single panel because the molding would be expensive, and then you would just repeat that pattern inevitably. But whereas 3D printing allows us to, of course not cheaply, but more cheap than before, to do a lot of different things. Like so the idea of 3D printing allowing us to do more organic systems or organic products, I think is why we sit here. Of course, there's also with 3D printing these limitations, but they can be solved oftentimes geometrically. It's like rule number one in the design book of making things sustainable is just one material. Just if you can do thing in one material, then you did good. And then of course the complexity on top of that allows us to do clever systems, but still have this kind of organic beauty to them, I think.
I would have a question on that. Well, there is a always running discussion, form and function. Do you think the digital fabrication actually closed this gap between like with monomateriality, but also like the form shaping? What do you think about that?
I think also maybe related to the presentation Miguel gave from Nagami, I think we're more and more thinking of 3D printing projects not as a geometry that we produce, but we're thinking of the toolpath. So in a way, you can't really achieve form without having the function in mind. So I actually believe maybe we start with the function and along the way we define this visual language, I would say. But of course, depends on the project as well.
No, it's hard to start without the object, but we all had this journey, I think, to realize. How does it work for you, Sol?
I think it definitely makes both processes closer. So designing, having the fabrication in mind, and it really makes the whole process easier. Like with all the parameters of fabrication in mind, with all the thickness, and that design approach makes that when we design architecture, objects, or different categories, that the fabrication is already in mind, and we, as architects, as designers, we make sure that this is feasible, this can be fabricated, and different from maybe some traditional or architectural approaches. So we have the materiality in mind, we have the structural, how it works structurally in mind. So definitely makes it closer and also give us more tools to continue developing this process and to continue getting closer to definitely close that bridge.
Yeah, I personally, for example, really like the discovering of the functionality over the form that is happening very often in digital fabrication, that I would never expect that. That's, oh, yeah, you can also put this one there. Or like discovering, like inspiring yourself, or like you start with one object, but you actually, this object is better for some other function. So in this way, it's a little bit closer to regular, we will do the chair, you know, and go around this. Is more flexible in this way, in my opinion.
Yeah, like I feel it's like a loop, a continuous loop of designing the form, testing it, and then like so having a function, but then it can completely change, and that's what the whole process gives us the possibility.
Yeah, but there is one thing that I want to mention, that I would like to break the myth of if you have a computational design, parametric design script, that means you can apply this for everything. Because there is one thing that I think is connecting us amongst the designers, that it's only for one thing always.
No, definitely. I think if we have this problem we want to solve, I think it's important to first look at, for example, how is nature solving this problem already for billions of years? And then what is the best way to replicate this and keep, of course, additive manufacturing also has its limitations, but how can we replicate this principle from nature in the most efficient way? And sometimes it's, of course, additive manufacturing, which helps closing the gap very efficiently, but it's not always the case. So we should not apply it to everything just to be able to apply it.
Yeah, it's very much related to the fabrication. But Mikkel, for you, it's like you're also mixing a little bit of an old fabrication style with the new one. It's a little bit merging of the words that seems to be separated, but at the end of the day, they are not so much.
No. I think that I never went into 3D printing because I liked 3D printing. Like I like no, but I see it as a tool that can do things, and I think that good design is always connected to its production. Like you can't just make something and then draw it, and then say now we need to make this thing, and then you do throw it into like some kind of manufacturing system that has to do all kind of loopholes to make the thing that you just drew a reality. So I think all good design kind of has to connect to the material, of course, but also its production. Sometimes you have to 3D print things, but there's also like this huge machine of standard manufacturing that is insanely efficient. And we're not going to change that. That's just going to be continuing forever. But I think there's still some kind of, because additive manufacturing is so flexible, there are areas where we can make new products fit into those old machines. So we also at the studio oftentimes do collaborations with large industrial manufacturers. And then we see, okay, if there's some way we can optimize your system here by adding in additive manufacturing into that kind of machine. And it is a widely difficult thing to do because they do things the same as they have always done. Like, and if the machine is not ready for doing something different, then you can't just make a new thing. So finding where additive manufacturing fits into this is difficult. Of course, there are companies that just do additive manufacturing, but I also think that there is a huge win in going into traditional manufacturing, see where can we do
and create a hybrid.
Yeah, exactly. Some kind of hybrid factories, but it is difficult.
Still, a lot of companies are pretty afraid of additive manufacturing.
Yeah. But
if you're used to a certain production technique, then if you only talk about additive manufacturing?
Yeah, it seems. Yeah, it's still the different word for a lot of productions. Or like, well, I'm happy that it lose this trend kind of level, because finally we can talk on the technicalities and engineering of that. And if you like, how does it work also with from your perspective in terms of the clients? Is there better conscious, like, or like they learn more about 3D printing over the last decade, so you finally don't have to explain so much in terms of the process? Or like, how does it work? It's still a lot.
I still have the thing that when they come with a thing they already have and say, can we just 3D print this instead? And that just never makes sense. Like, I have never tried where that actually makes sense. So I still think there's like a huge gap between what traditional manufacturing thing, additive manufacturing, can do and what it actually is good at. Because what additive manufacturing could do is complex things. Like, it can add a lot of functions together in the same part, for example, and that's where it should be used. But just talking to traditional manufacturing, I think, is always difficult. But I think it's getting better and better. And we did like huge research projects around figuring out where are the thresholds of making products fit into old companies with additive manufacturing. So I think it's getting better, but it's still difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, following. I do think they are closer to understanding, to get into the technique, even though there is a distance. But I also think that additive manufacturing is also growing and growing. So there are also different types and different materials. So sometimes it's also the gap between the old additive manufacturing and all the possibilities that we have today. It's also growing. So I think that's where we as designers can approach and really understand and select how we are going to build things and why we're going to do it that way, so we can really have a good explanation and to really get into the whole concept to the client, right?
Yeah, and I will start with the question in terms of the physical objects. How important it is, like, is it enough to keep it in a digital environment, or you actually cannot wait to get the object done in a physical, like to have it in your hands? Because I can tell you, I cannot wait. I mean, it doesn't count if it's not physical. I cannot read this fully. It's like a whole surprise when it's done.
It's the same. I think the only thing that kind of made that leap a little bit smaller is virtual reality. We do a lot of work in virtual reality now, and you can see the thing in augmented reality before you make it. So, and you can put it into the scene that it should be in when it's done, and you can see how it would look when it's done. So, but still seeing the materiality and things like that is also, of course,
touching this.
Yeah, exactly.
How important is touching this? Yeah,
and flexing of the materials and all of that. Yeah, of course.
I think,
yeah.
You want to go?
Yeah.
I think as well, apart from being excited to see what the material will look like with the 3D model that you have in mind in your idea, sometimes you will really be surprised that it's really not going to behave how you expect it to. So I start prototyping right from the beginning, because otherwise, you define this complex, crazy system and then you want to assemble it and the edges don't match. I think it's also about, depending on the material, of course, but really jumping into production right away to make sure your predictions are predictable.
Yeah, this was what I wanted to say. Indeed, you have to test very quickly, because for me, it always also is about how is the material behaving, what is indeed the flexibility, what is the strength, what is the structure doing in combination with the material you used, So it's not only about seeing it. Indeed, this also sometimes is completely different than you had in mind. But it's also about how the material is behaving and in combination with the...
But in case of your projects, it's really hard to predict in a small scale the behavior of the material. So you really have to see the one-to-one scale and the final object to finally feel it, right? Or like you are able to predict this in the small models. You already know that, okay, this scale is functioning very similarly to one-to-one scale.
Now, for example, for the chairs I did a bunch of like small experiments, you know, from 10 to 10 centimeters to see what is this structure doing with the same material as, and what is this structure doing with the same material. And you can receive a lot of information about that without these small experiments instead of completely printing it already like in one go. I think it helps a lot, but
Yeah, the test samples.
yeah, samples, yeah.
But it's still like, how do you feel like, I want to touch on one subject that is also not maybe highlight enough, the living with uncertainty. Because on the one hand, especially like for you, like studying industrial design, it's not a common thing to be in the process that it's so uncertain until the final, and the claim that this is going to be amazing object, but until the really final, you cannot know 100%, right? So how does it like work for you? How you handling this uncertainty till the end?
Yeah, quick. Now, I think this is also like a trial and error process, right? Like nature builds, it's also like trial and error. Sometimes it's working, sometimes you have to make adjustments. Like, yeah, for me, it's like an evolving process also.
I think it's also kind of exciting to let the material be also stakeholder. And sometimes it's really not nice. It didn't do what you wanted it to do, but other times it teaches you, oh, this is a different direction to go, and maybe this product is more suited for something else that I didn't think of. So I think it also brings opportunities in a way, and sometimes it's nice to let go and let the technology do its thing.
So the trust in the technology a little bit, like handling uncertainty. Okay, to closing this panel, I have a last question. If nature is the teacher and technology is the tool, what's the one lesson you want this room to leave with?
I think we as human beings are a little bit too much centralizing ourselves compared to the whole system of nature. And I think it's so important to look at this whole system instead of putting ourselves here. And so, yeah.
Okay, I think that what we're trying to do, both in the way we design things, is we try to do connected designs, things that solve different problems at the same time. And that is exactly what, when we look at nature, what it does. Like a tree is not just a tree; it's a building block for all the things around it, things like that. So trying to design things more in a more connected way, and also in a flexible way. Like what I like about this kind of additive manufacturing thing is like it's super flexible, and we should use that flexibility to the fullest. So the thing that you don't have to print the same thing twice, that is I think the key thing here is that we can do all different kinds of things, site-specific things that nature is insanely good at. Is like there's not two trees that are the same, but they do the same function. But depending on where it should be, it will have different characteristics. And just putting that design into to the production in 3D printing I think is where the biggest win could be.
Yeah, I think we need to increase our awareness into the natural environment. There are a lot of systems of geometry, but also performances, inherent processes that happens in nature, so that we as designers can be more aware and integrate those systems and those ways of doing and thinking into our projects. I think there are big possibilities, and as Mikkel said, like it's completely related to digital fabrication and how it works, and the type of outputs and the type of speed that one can build. So it's really a very powerful connection between the two.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from nature in terms of what you can do and how to do it in an optimal way. But also, I guess generally my message is to like stay curious, keep seeing what the systems do and cannot do. I feel like I enter the workshop every day and I see my colleagues challenge what I thought was possible and not possible. So ask more questions and keep trying new things, I would say.
That's great. I mean, from my side is the whole focus, Mikkel touched a little bit this subject of the evolution, because it's like in the current industrial design, we kind of stop evolution at a certain time and guarding this to don't change because the market will collapse. And that's something, yeah, that's true. But that's something that I discovered in large-scale 3D printing especially, that all of a sudden you can do the reiteration, materials change, production change, and you can always be better. That's something that nature showcases. That nature is always better. It's always winning with the better solution. Well, that would be my closing sentence. Thank you very much, everyone. I would like to thank my panelists for incredible conversation. Thank you very much. And a big applause, please, for everyone.